Hi, welcome back to Frazzle Dad's Minis. I'm Jim, Frazzle Dad. Who doesn't love an awesome chunky tank boy or girl? And this week I'm going to show you how I made these awesome dreadnoughts from Shane's upcoming campaign via Dungeons and Dreadnoughts. I'll have a link down in the description. First off, please, by all means, hit subscribe if you're not already. Small channel, and every subscriber really helps, and I'd appreciate it if you'd help me grow the channel a bit. Okay, but to the point. I've built a number of things from Dungeons and Dreadnoughts over the last year, 18 months. I think they were actually the very first Patreon tribe, my mini factory tribe that I joined. The crew just builds fantastic models. Science fiction-y theme, there's some nice terrain stuff, but the quality's top-notch, both thematically, meaning like artistic and, themes, but also they're just really well engineered. Everything, the bigger pieces is really well designed for posability, really good ball and socket joints. There are thoughtful things about how keyed pieces fit together. And the models are just a lot of fun. So I was chatting with Shane a couple weeks ago, and he gave me a sneak peek at some renders for this line that he's preparing for some form of a campaign. And it was Japanese-themed dreadnoughts, like Ronin, samurai, that type of thing. And I went nuts. And basically I pestered him until he gave me early access to the models. And so this video today is walking through the bits and pieces on 3 different models that I built. There's a 4th available. They were glorious to work with. Really crisp, well-designed pieces. An insane amount of weapons options. I have a huge pile of leftover weapons because I wasn't paying attention when I loaded up all the build plates, and I've got, no kidding, probably 20 extra weapons. But the pieces are just a lot of fun. The models are just a lot of fun to work with, and I had a really, really good time working on them. So, that's enough of me jabbering. Let's get after it. So here is one tray of parts for just one of the 3 models. Supports are really well done on these models. There are a lot of the little tiny mini, M-I-N-I, supports, but they come off really easy, either just, with tweezers or a knife blade. The details on all of these are really, really clear. Somewhere later on down the line, I'll show some construction. There are some really smart choices that they made around designing using sort of key tabs to lock things together. That worked out really well. It's just a big pile of resin to work on cleaning up and getting together. Starting to take some notes about ideas that I've got. You've seen me talk about this time and time again. I think it's important on some projects, not every project, but I think it's important to write down a plan and ideas as you're going along. Sometimes it's fun to just paint, but I knew this was a big deal, a big project, a crap ton of parts. So writing down some ideas along this big project really helped me out. Most of the major joints here use a ball and socket design, and that's wonderful for posability, but frankly it sucks a little bit for assembly and stability. I've tried a bunch of different glue types, CAs, epoxy. 2-part epoxy takes too long to cure. So what I do is pin them in place with paper clips. So that involves drilling one side, either the ball or the socket, gluing a paper clip in there, trimming it a little bit, figuring out where it impacts on the other side, drilling that part out, and then making sure that both sides are very well scuffed with sanding and scoring. And then I use a really good black gap-filling CA glue and activator to get the two together. And I've got just enough time to sort of bend and adjust that paper clip as needed. So the paper clip is a little bit flexible, but then it provides the stability on the joint. And I've done this with a bunch of models after I'd figured out this good trick. Lots of other people have figured this out before. I'm a bit slow. So drill, sand both sides really well, score them up, get the paper clip in, get the glue in, get the activator again, press them together, adjust, hold. And since I started doing this, I've not had any major troubles with getting things to stick. Now I'm out in my garage and I'm starting to lay down some paint, color paint on the primed models. Figured y'all didn't need to see me priming stuff. I'm using one of the Broken Anvil blues. I think it's blue number 2, maybe blue number 1. Lots of negative opinions about Broken Anvil, but the darker blues work really well. Thin them a lot, and as much as I really dislike everything about Broken Anvil, the pigments they got with these paints, pretty impressive. And they spray well if you take time to figure out thinning for your particular setup. I think I'm doing about a 3-to-1 paint to my mix of thinner and flow improver. But this is just laying down color. Starting to lay down AK Wine Red, which I really love. This is one of my favorite colors. It dries into a much darker, deeper red than it goes on spraying. I use this color all the time. Sprays well, brushes well, and just this beautiful, dark, rich red color. At some point, I'll be hitting a bit of orange to lend some highlighting. Mixing in white with red doesn't work well because it turns things pink. And if you want pink, that's great. But otherwise, using orange or yellow and then glazing over a bit works really well. Back inside working at my desk. Up to the right, you'll notice the Gold Shift Fellow. I ended up not liking that. You'll see more of my repainting of that later. But for now, I am going in and blocking in all of the non-armor parts with black. My vision for this piece is to use that glorious wine red on the armor, but have all of the mechanical pieces black with like silver highlights. So this is just catching up and covering the overspray and getting the blacking in done. I'm starting to block in with Broken Anvil number 2 orange, I think. Coverage with this is a little difficult. I ended up stacking up a bunch of layers, still wasn't happy with the coverage I was getting. I think at one point, after like 3, maybe even 4 layers, I added in some white to get better coverage and then came back with the just straight color. So it is a bit fussy to work with. Orange and yellows often are. So lots of layers. Consider adding in some white for opacity, then come back to the color. But this is just blocking it out and getting after it. It's a really lovely color, in case that isn't obvious. Here I'm laying down some yellow. I'm using Broken Anvil number 2 yellow. Some of the examples I saw of Japanese armor, and this is going back even before I started this project, there was this lovely scheme of a rich blue and a bright yellow. Oftentimes it was threading or cloth decorations, and I wanted to bring that same notion here. This is a bit brighter than the examples I saw, but I like the real pop. Working with this yellow, I'm thinning it down to make sure that it's flowing well into these small areas. It takes several coats to get a good coverage. I did mix in some white at one part to try to help with the opacity, and then went back with just the straight yellow to make sure that I got the tone right. But I'm really liking how this pops and looks here. This model. This is the Kawachi. No clue if I'm pronouncing that right. I started off with a violet color shift. That looked just gross. I reprimed it, went with a gold color shift, and I just wasn't happy with how it looked. So I painted everything over and decided that I would put in some serious work on non-metallic metal. I'm shooting for kind of a worn steel look. I'm trying to get the lighting angles and highlights in on this. I'm doing a bit of edge highlighting here to see how things popped. As I move on with this, I wasn't really happy with the overall lighting effect. I never really got it done well. I got some really good feedback about making the darks much more prevalent, and I make some adjustments later on. Non-metallic metal is kind of hard, and I was just having a very difficult time wrapping my head around what the light should look like on these flat panels. Regardless, as I worked through all of this, I got some really good reps in just on the basics. Even if I didn't get the light exactly right, I was working with highlighting and mid-tones. Later on, I'm working with some actual stippling. I got really good reps in for that. So, the outcome wasn't exactly as I'd hoped for, but I'm pretty happy with how things turned out. I'll probably bounce back and show more of this later, but this is kind of a process bit here. With number 3 and number 4 blues from Broken Anvil, and I'm blocking out some of the volumes to try to show some lighting here. The number 4 of the blue, green, and violet from Broken Anvil is really difficult to work with. There's something about the makeup of it when you have it on a wet palette, it just grabs a whole bunch of extra moisture. So it's that results in it being over thinned. So it's a bit fussy to work with. I'm playing around with some glazing medium a bit later on, but this is just getting the basic volumes blocked out here and then working on trying to smooth out some transitions. Now I'm starting to lay down the groundwork for some of the plasma effects. So I'm getting a base here of white on the various glowy parts for all the 9 billion different weapons that I'm using. After that, I'll start adding on some fluorescent effects, but this is just blocking out the basic whites. Details is this flag for the back of the Kamachi Dreadnought. And if you look at different Japanese armor pieces, some of the samurais would have these flags attached to their backs, and so they were going into the battle, and they'd have great images on them. So I'm having some fun here just painting sort of red blazons with white on there. And this is a really cool techno-geeky detail about this particular flag. It's all little hex pieces strung together. So yeah, just playing around with reds and whites to make a very vibrant flag for the back of this particular dreadnought. I'm starting to work on the fluorescence for the plasma, and I'm using golden fluorescent paints and a bit of titanium white from Pro-Acryl. I ended up not being all that happy with these and kind of redid some things and used more of an airbrush approach. But this was a good experiment, and it didn't quite land the way I wanted it to. I wasn't getting that good dispersion, but this was a good learning experience. There you have it. I lost a pretty good chunk of video. Sorry, the final details, painting a few of the things, my freehand. The freehand on the one piece on the Ronin, there's a funny story behind that. Those characters are actually Japanese for soup. Some years ago, I saw a really funny hysterical about some girl showing off her tattoo that she had, and it was either Japanese or Chinese in script, and she was like, "Oh, it means love." And in the background, there's this little Asian grandma, and she says, "It says soup." I thought that was funny, so I put that on my Ronin, because yeah, I'm that guy. These models are just over-the-top awesome. They were great fun to build and paint. I was probably crazy for biting off all three at once, but the kind of cool thing was when I'd get tired of working on painting of one unit, of one model, I could go to one that I was doing completely different things on. The NMM on the Kamachi, I went back and forth with a number of times. It wasn't my greatest NMM effort, but it was the first time I'd try to do a whole armor piece. I learned a lot. I realized that I was not approaching the flat panels well, but I recovered a bit and I learned a lot for the next time. I can't get over how awesome the Japanese theme of these models is. I hope Shane and the folks kill it with their campaign. Please, by all means, take a look down for the link. Go follow their campaign. While you're at it, if you're not already, please subscribe. I'm a tiny channel. Every subscriber helps. Give me a thumbs up and a like. Leave me a comment about what you think of these models and my paint job on them. Without further ado, here's the grand reveal. Thank you for watching this far. I really appreciate it. Remember, go out, learn something, practice, try something new, experiment. It's okay to fail. Remember, it's just paint and plastic. Until next time, see you later. Bye-bye.